Welcome to the third part of making a catsuit, which follows right on from the end of the second part. Here I'm extending the centre line by the over-the-shoulder distance, drawing a perpendicular, and then copying the distances on the left and right sides of the top body circumference to that new perpendicular to prepare for a well-formed rectangle with right angles when I extend the front fold line and back line a little later on. Don't worry about my strangely curved T-square here, that's just the wide-angle camera lens. Because I'm eliminating the centre front seam on this catsuit, this shoulder construction isn't quite central with the rest of the suit, so I'm just plotting the rectangle's actual centre line. If you didn't eliminate the centre front seam, just use the old centre line. So that's the front fold line and back line extended, and now I'm marking the centre of the two sides of the rectangle. To draw a circle with the same circumference as my neck, I need to work out its radius. That's 400mm divided by 6.28, which is 64. I'm plotting the neck now, measuring downwards from the centre mark on the front line by half the radius, 32, and upwards by half the radius from the centre mark on the back. Now I draw semicircles. Normally I'd use a pair of compasses, but I lost mine, and this bit of metal had holes in just the right positions. If you remember, I had the T-square up here, and I measured the flat width from underarm to centre, and to where the gap was too narrow for my finger, so I'm going to use those measurements. From the front fold line, which represents the chest centre, I mark the shadow width, the flat distance from chest centre to armpit, and then the wedge width, where the T-square was too close to get my finger in, and now the same on the other side. Now I build the raglan curve. Draw a line from the centre of the circle to the flat width mark. Then draw a perpendicular up from the wedge width mark, and then a line from that intersection to the centre of the top body measurement. That's the raglan curve. To copy it for the sleeve shoulder, draw a line through the ends of the raglan curve and plot a perpendicular from that to the intersection. Then back the same distance on the other side to make a diamond shape, as I do here. Note that if you've eliminated the centre front seam, then you'll be using the new centre added earlier, not the one used by the rest of the pattern. If you're keeping the centre front seam, it's just the same centre we've used all along. I do exactly the same thing on the back, but the lengths and angles are different, and I'm actually tracing over in pen here, so it's easier for you to see. Note I could just fold the paper between the ends of the raglan curve and trace through the mirrors for the sleeve piece, but I find it easier to construct them like this. Here you can see the whole thing laid out. Now I'm going to copy the body's back shoulder section. This is for the overlap part of the zipless suit. If you're going to put a zip in your suit, then you don't need this bit. I draw down the centre line by 50mm from the underarm line, then mark its halfway point at 25mm. I measure 25mm up the back line from the underarm line and mark that line there. Then pencil in a curve starting perpendicular at the back line with that mark and becoming parallel to the lower part of the raglan curve at its other end, again at the mark. Then copy over that in pen. This piece's back line I mark fold. Now I'm going to do the same for the arm measurements that I did for the leg. Align the paper, make marks for the centre line, join them, mark the lengths along it, plot perpendicular circumferences, draw a smooth curve, copy it in pen, fold the paper and mirror the curve. Now I'm drawing out along the centre line by the difference between the arm up and arm down measurements, and now I plot the perpendicular. I take the two raglan shoulder pieces and join them along the middle with some tape. Then I measure the centre of the over the shoulder line and plot a perpendicular to cut it evenly in two. I place the pieces so that their corners are on the end of the top shoulder circumference and their edges cross centrally at the arm up down perpendicular. Tape them in place, turn over, then use a French curve, you can buy them in fabric shops, to draw a curve parallel to both the arm's centre line and the shoulder pieces. Make sure you use exactly the same part of the curve for the two sides. Now add 5mm around the shoulder area for seam allowance. Now I'm copying the back half of the sleeve down to the half the bicep. This is for the zipless suit. If you're making a zipped suit, you don't need this bit. I write on the piece to say what it is. You should do this for all of your pieces. More seam allowance. The raglan curves for the chest and back on the main body piece. Just extend the piece by taping on scraps of tissue paper if you need to, then measure out by 5mm and draw in the outlines. For straight lines you only need to mark the beginning and the end, which is not what I'm doing here. I was tired when I shot this video, but you do need to make multiple marks for curves. Fill in with pen. Having marked the seam allowance for the back shoulder, hopefully not as wonky as I did this, you can just copy the seam allowance onto the overlap piece if you're making a zipless suit. Better yet, make the overlap piece after you've added seam allowance.